Hey, welcome back, everybody. HSC Podcast number 19. Getting deep again. Got Big Box Steve on the mic, joined by co-host Derek the Big Smooth. So interesting. A lot of things happening across all different scopes right now. So tonight, we're just going to kind of, talk about some topics, whether they're currently in the media or been in the media, or maybe it's sports related, or maybe it's some other things we talked about in the past. Just kind of, talk about what's happening and not necessarily very specific topics. But, as we get started here, there is one thing that maybe it's because I've been looking at it a lot and watched documentary and then looked into all of the conspiracy theories around it. But so have you heard of Bob Lazar?
No.
So he's the guy back in the late 80s claimed to have worked at Area 51 or a place at Area 51 called S4. And so he's one of the guys that came out and said that we have alien technology down in Area 51 that we're working on, like reverse engineering, things like that. And it's a really interesting story. And so it's something that, so it must have been, man, I want early 2000s, the first time like I saw some videos and stuff on him, and, because he had all kinds of, it's been obviously going on for 30 years. And that's the first time I saw some videos on it, and it was an interesting story to me. So I want to talk a little bit about that and get your thoughts. And again, you I know you haven't dug into it, so I'll give you and the listeners the best possible information here. So first of all, what do you think of a claim that down in Area 51, whether it be S4 or wherever, they have these alien crafts in hangars and they're trying to reverse engineer the technology? I mean, just that, like, how does that hit you?
It wouldn't be like shocking to me. I mean, it just doesn't seem like something must have happened at some point. So
because you believe in aliens or UFOs, that would relate to that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because I mean, it's not like, we're not gonna, if we find a ship, it's not like we're gonna try and not figure out how it works or figure out anything about technology from it.
Right.
That'd be dumb not to.
And then obviously we would hide it from the public.
Yeah.
And what better place to do that than in Area 51? What's
Deep in
interesting, well, before this guy, and I don't know what to think of this guy's story, because I've watched so many different things on it and read so much, like pro and con, right? But back even as far as like the early 70s, there was leaks of what was happening down in Area 51 as far as, they have alien technology. Obviously, that's where we develop all of our spy technology, like stealth was developed down there. All spy planes, things going all the way back to the 60s and whenever that was actually a thing. So it kind of makes sense to me, as I think about that, not trying to take sides. I mean, you have this place where all this technology is developed. It's very secretive, can't get to it. And now and there's been other claims, he's not the only claim. They found, they released like a paper talking about the project that was, I don't remember what they called the project, but it states in the project they're working on re-engineering UFO technology. So that wouldn't surprise you. You're saying a knee-jerk reaction from that if somebody said, hey, they have flying saucers down Area 51 and they're trying to reverse engineer them. You're open to that?
Yeah, I mean, think about it too. Who knows? And I'm not going to go conspiracy wise, but like the nuclear bomb, the Manhattan Project, was down in that area. It was in New Mexico, so it was close. It was in the desert. Maybe they got technology from that, or figured out something like, we might be able to do this from that.
Right. Maybe that's where nuclear technology or nuclear bomb technology
Yeah.
came from. Well, it's interesting you say that because he's talking about he was in his claim, he was hired to work just on the propulsion side of it because that was his expertise. Um, Funny thing, like he was in the newspaper down, I think it's Los Alamos, California, or something like that. I think it's Los Alamos, California, but like he built a car when he was real young with a jet engine on it. And like he was in the newspaper and he's famous for he's being the jet engine car guy, right?
Right.
And so his specialty was propulsion. And so he was only working on how the energy, which they call like an antimatter, he calls it an antimatter type energy source that propels these, which allows them to move like they move, and be able to travel obviously great speeds and great distances and different than how we travel on basic propulsion. But the reason that was interesting is to me is because his claim was about this element 115, and I don't want to dig in that too much, but this element wasn't on the periodic table, obviously, when he was there, and it wasn't even on there when he was talking about it. And then years later, we are now it's been added to the periodic table. We're working on stabilizing it and creating an isotope around it, right? And so to me, that's kind of a strange thing. It's like this guy talked about this element. So all the conspiracy stuff aside, he talks about an element, and then that element shows up in testing and on the periodic table years later.
Right.
So that,
but could it be more after he talked about it, it was theorized, and then scientists decided to figure out how to make that element?
well, how would he know about it? Is he's just some super smart guy?
Jet engine on a car, right?
I know. And well, I mean, that's you start thinking about it, and maybe from research he did, or in the community he was in, it was in theory, and maybe that's how he knew about it and brought it up. But I still think it's interesting that, and it's not an element we can recreate. Like they're still working on even stabilizing it and doing more than just creating a couple atoms out of it, but it's very it can create a lot of energy. It's very radioactive. So I thought that was an interesting part of that, where this pops up later. So that was one thing to me. And again, there's the conspiracy side of, everybody's trying to discredit him, where you got people trying to prove, what he said is real. And there's an interesting shift that happened over the last 30 years. It's like a lot of stuff he said, he was in the first 10, 15 years of this, he's being totally discredited, and they're just like slamming him up to saying like he didn't go to the colleges he said he went to, and didn't work at the places he worked of, and all of a sudden these places have no records of him. He doesn't have a birth certificate anymore, and it's like, all this stuff's happening. But now, like in the latter part of his whole story, especially them digging in and doing these documentaries and things, now a lot of the stuff he had said is proving to be true. Like they said he didn't have this job, and then all of a sudden, but he was in their phone directory, and things like that. And that's kind of interesting to me, where it's like, well, if this guy's just the average normal like wacko, do you really go into like trying to destroy his life, arresting him for things,
Well, wouldn't he have been around doing that during Hoover?
Well, this was late 80s.
Late 80s.
He was late 80s.
So would that be Bush?
Yeah. I mean, so for him, he immediately came out, like, so he apparently didn't work there very long. When he saw the technology, he came out immediately. He was actually got in trouble for like going out and filming the test flights. And so basically they were going to fire him anyway, and, things like that. So he came out pretty quickly with that information. But I think that it's an interesting story. There's a documentary on it, but there's a lot of cons, and a lot of people trying to disprove all his stuff. And so it's just a very interesting subject. But more importantly, I guess to me, the subject is, why are they hiding? What's the point in hiding the technology if they have it?
Yeah. They want to proprietary it, and they don't want everyone to know about it.
So is it more so it's because then they want to control it? If they have this technology, we want to control it for our government or for our power.
Yeah, no government really works together when it comes to stuff like that. I mean,
Yeah.
we're not going to let Russia or China or even England, you know what I mean? They're not going to let them get that information.
Well, just because, if you can replicate this, can reverse engineer this, you've got a technology and a power that, is unparalleled in the world. Like there's nothing like it, right? Supposedly, especially if you're talking about interstellar travel, things like that. Once you have that technology, so that's interesting to me. Like I think there's a lot of the parts of the story that when you think about it rationally or common sensely, like, oh, that makes sense. They would do that. That would be the thing. But then on the other side, with all the discrediting of him, you're like, oh, this guy could be just lying, and so it's a great topic to spend a little time, look at the good and the bad, like people who are trying to discredit him versus the credit. But anymore, it's really coming to light with more documentaries, podcasts. I think Rogan has a good one on him, and so it's a fun topic. So I just I know we talked about aliens before, but I want to throw that one out there because it's not like the typical aliens, right? It's not like people saying, hey, I saw a UFO. This guy's saying I worked on a UFO, which I think it's a unique story, right? We don't see that one too often. Sweet. So next topic. So what'd you bring topic wise?
Well, going off last week where we were talking about the Depp and Heard, and I'll go in the craziness of the whites.
Yeah. So you go ahead and dig into that one for everybody. I know people probably seen or heard it, but what do you know? What do you heard?
So Casey White is in jail, and he's in jail for a long, long time.
On death row, right?
Is he death row? I think it was something like 70 years. So he might be death row now. He befriends a guard, Vicky White, no relation.
Weird.
Yeah, it's weird. And they come up with this plan where she's like, I'm going to take him to a psychic eval, for stuff. And then they just disappear. And
so because I didn't really, it's hard actually to go back and look at how the actual escape details. Like it's harder to find some of those details. So I didn't know that were the details of that. So how does this guy though, this murderer or guy who's got whatever 70 years get like one-on-one to be able to go with her to some psych eval?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to figure that out. Something happened where she must have had lots of access. But yeah, she just was like, I'm taking this prisoner to this. And then they had no record of it. It wasn't in the system at all.
Right. And so, so she just walks a prisoner out.
Yeah.
On the basis.
They take a car and then they ditch it a few miles away and then get in another car. And then they made their way. They were in Alabama and they made their way to, where did they end up? Was it Indiana? So.
Yeah. And then they had, so how was the falling out? Like, so she shoots herself, right?
Yeah.
Is that's the claim?
Yeah. So they had a police chase and he was driving and the police rammed him, crashed the car. And then she's like, I'm not dealing with this. And then she shoots herself.
Wow. And so he doesn't. I read something about his plan was to have a shootout though.
Yeah. Yeah.
But because of the crash, he couldn't.
Yeah, I think because of the crash, he was kind of disoriented. She, I guess, was screaming at him like, "Get us back to the hotel." So, yeah, I don't think she was thinking things through.
Right. Yeah, and this one's interesting also because it makes you kind of question like the people that we have in charge of important things, right? I mean, being a prison guard, protecting, not letting guards, prisoners escape, like these seems like an important job, and yet we still have this person who's willing to do that. she also was like selling her home or something like that, like so they said that she was going to sell her home and retire, and that was like her plan. So what does this lady have to gain from helping this guy?
Yeah, never know. I just don't know what it is. And he was in jail for murder, so probably, I'm not the most trustworthy guy. But
Right. Well, I did see something where they compared, I don't remember what it's called, but they compared it to Stockholm syndrome, but it's with captors and inmates, where they develop some type of relationship from that, not from like not as much as it would be as like a personal relationship outside of incarceration, but because of the situation they're in, there is some type of sickness, or they call it a syndrome, I don't remember what they call it, but that is developed and known of between inmates and captors, um, or incarcerators, not captors. Captors would be Stockholm. So
yeah, well, that was like, if you've never watched Mindhunter on Netflix,
yeah,
it's an amazing show, and it's kind of where you realize a lot of these killer types are very persuasive and very
right.
suave. And he probably sold her a story and convinced her pretty much. And yeah,
So there's a lot of speculation of a love type story, and when you're talking about a younger guy, like he's in his late 30s, or mid to late 30s, and she's in her
yeah,
mid to late 50s.
which he's in jail because he killed his girlfriend who was 58.
Oh, so he already likes older women.
Yeah. And he's 38. So yeah.
Yeah, so there is, like, they're talking about this love aspect, which again, I haven't heard anything more than, or read too much into it, but they talk about, you have a love aspect, but what's the other outcome though? I mean, what does she get out of this? Is this guy can't be hiding millions somewhere?
No. I don't know what, because logically for me, I would think once he got what he wanted, she was not going to be around much longer.
Yeah, like he would probably just kill her off. Like, you don't want any witnesses. I mean,
Yeah.
he's already, that's what's weird to me, is like this guy's already in a situation of he's it's never going to better, his situation's never going to improve, so it doesn't matter how many people he kills or what he does. Where you're talking about, the woman has everything to lose, and really I have a hard time figuring out what she has to gain, in the whole situation.
Yeah. It's hard to say without delving too much into her personality. I mean, was she just super lonely? Was she just having a mental breakdown? Um, Maybe, I don't know. It's just kind of one of those. It's kind of crazy to think someone would go from that to, well, I'm going to break you out of jail.
Right. Yeah, and just because I'm lonely,
Yeah.
and what does this do to the level of trust that we have, when you see big cases like this that are highly publicized all over the media? Now, even though she's not technically a police officer, she's a corrections officer, she's still in law enforcement, and to a sense, that what does this do to the trust for people of law enforcement? It's like, oh,
Well,
we can't
that's
even
the thing
trust
is,
them.
I mean, nowadays it's hard to get people in jail, and now we're just, it looks like it's easy to get out. I mean, you can go around here and do tons of stuff without going to jail. And then you finally get someone who's done something seriously wrong, like kill people. And it's like, oh, I'm just going to walk him out of the jail that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously it's probably, the percentage is very low. Most people
Right.
aren't escaping, or getting this opportunity he got. Yeah, so there, I have two things that come to my mind. Like I said, the one is like, what does that do for trust? And how does that make people look at, or should we be trusting these people, or does that paint a bad picture for law enforcement, I guess, is one of my issues that I think comes up there. And then the second is, it's like, how now is that stretched to everything that we do? When you talk about, well, a police beating or something like police brutality, can we then step back and say, oh, well, they said this happened, do we believe them? When you start getting those different levels of distrust.
Well, that I think it's so hard because I don't want to, I'm not anti-police, but the problem is when you get, it's always the one bad egg and then they lie. And so then you got people going, see, they're all like that. And be like, oh, I couldn't do anything, but my body camera was off. I shot the person. Why was it off?
Yeah.
I mean, and then with this it's kind of an interesting topic because I think of like when teachers have relations with students and I mean that happens more than this, but we still don't have the same thought about teachers, maybe because they're not going off shooting people, but
right. Well, you mean where like they all can't be trusted because of a few bad eggs,
right? And that's what I mean. And it's true. Like, just think about when we were young and NWA was out singing about it already. That was 30 years ago.
right?
And think about that. Before we were even born, it was going on. And that's the problem is when we have, it's almost like a code. They don't want to rat on each other, but they need to all step up and they're supposed to be the best of the best.
Yeah. So the problem is what you're talking about is we get like a few bad eggs or you see it happen, but now it's like so highly publicized. And George Floyd's a great example, probably the biggest example we've seen in a long, long time. But look, I mean, it just gets public. It's everywhere, right? And you're talking about one incident, I mean, how many interactions do they have in the United States daily with a guy like George Floyd? And that doesn't happen, but we have this one situation that's really hyper focused.
Well, and that's the whole thing is you got this, and now you have no respect for police. So then you don't listen to what they tell you to do. So then they have to act, and then it gets on camera, and then they only catch the part where the police are acting,
right?
Not the part where it's like they're telling them to get down on the ground or anything like that. So it's kind of like it's like with your videos showing like Kamala Harris saying that the vaccine's bad,
right?
When they like doctor it. How can we even trust any of these videos now?
Well, yeah, and that's another issue, right? Is like the information we're being fed, how can you trust it even for what it is? But then on the second part is what's cut out, and what context are these things in? Kamala Harris and Joe Biden are a great example of that, because if you are anti Joe Biden, and you can go on the internet right now, YouTube, whatever, and find so many clips of him, misspeaking, saying the wrong thing, forgetting his train of thought and things like that. But then you got to compare it to how many times is he captured on camera, right?
Right.
And so, compartmentalizing those videos and those sound bites, into, even if you put 10 of them in a row, now it sounds really bad. But then it's like, are those 10 in a row over 1 million clips that you had to view? I mean, obviously not 1 million, but a lot, right?
Right.
So I guess that kind of falls in the same thing I'm asking. Have you ever watched like the First Amendment audit videos where they go and they do something to kind of incite the cops, but they do it knowing that what they're doing is legal?
No.
So what they'll do is they'll go and film, right, in like government buildings or around government buildings, but they'll be in public areas of the buildings, and they'll talk about First Amendment rights and being able to film in a public area. And they're they can't stop them from doing it, and then the cops, every officer always is like, well, I need to see your ID. And then always, you can't see my ID. I haven't committed a crime. Right. But, and it's funny is you just watch these videos and it's like, there's a lot of them because now there's people doing it just to get views, so now you see it all over the place. But it is a legally protected act. But at the same time, what is it okay? Do we not want the cops saying, hey, what are you doing? Why are you filming this FBI building? Why are you in this government owned place? Why are you in the police station? Do we not want them doing that? And because basically now they're pushing these First Amendment audits, and now the cops are getting more gun shy with, how and who they approach, which could be a good thing, right? Makes them have to understand the law and our rights. Is there a bad side to that?
Well, that's where we can get into the Capitol riots, right? Back in the day, if anyone tried anything like that, there would be no chance for anyone to go into the buildings.
Right.
They would have been like, nope, we're getting the hoses out. We're doing all this.
Yeah. I mean, go back far enough, they'd have shot him.
Yeah. I mean, and now they're just let them go in.
Well, yeah. I mean, they kind of really did let them go in. And, when you look at some of that, and I'm not one of those people that says, well, they didn't happen. It was all, staged and things like that. Obviously people were there. Obviously they were, protesting, but it should be harder than that to get into the Capitol building.
Well, and I don't want to be that guy, but I didn't see many black people going into that building.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you didn't see any, like, to be honest with you, a lot of the videos I saw, especially deeper into the Capitol videos that they showed, because most of the videos, if you want to see a significant amount of people, you either have to be in front of the building before they enter or at the very front when they first enter. After that area, those two areas, you don't see hundreds of people in these videos. You see like one or two people, right, being followed by one or two security guards, and that, to me, that seems a little strange. It's like, well, you said hundreds of people got in, thousands of people are outside, but only two guys made it to Pelosi's chair. I mean, that's a little strange.
I will say it is a little, what they've done too is they've overblown this completely. It's like, ooh, they came in and took some pictures.
Right.
They vandalized some areas. It's terrorism.
But I mean, that's just like, if you're really in the middle, right, you're not really trying to favor one side, you're not going to say that, right? You're going to say, hey, this was just a protest. The fact that they got inside in the first place is, I don't put that on the protesters. I put that on.
I just think it was a bunch of idiots that they let in, and they got away with it until they started taking pictures of them, and then they started catching them, and then
well, yeah, tons of them got arrested,
complaining about their dietary needs. That one cracked me out.
Well, and I mean, so that guy, right? He wears I don't even know what his outfit is, but he's got like the furs on and the horns on his head. And I mean, I guess is that the type of guy you let in? You're like, if you want to get the most exposure, you like let him in and take pictures of him, be like, look, here's the type of people coming in here, even though he's like the only one.
Right. Well, yeah, it's like if your whole thing was, doing the rights of the right or whatever, why aren't you letting these guys in? Because it doesn't help your case whatsoever.
Yeah.
It's like, why don't you send some people that look a little bit more
normal?
Yes.
Well, and then that's the left-leaning view, is that none of them are normal, otherwise why are they at the Capitol protesting? And again, it's just a protest, just like anything else. It's like, why are BML riots destroying Black communities, burning down their own, or not their own, but other people's like businesses and things like that, and harming people that they're supposedly protesting for.
Right.
You know, it's like the same thing to me. It's like you're really stepping on your own foot, you know, on both, on either side there. Like going and protesting Capitol is really stepping on your own foot.
Right. Well, it's like Rodney King or the Watts riots. You were all destroying their own neighborhoods, and how does that help?
Yeah, and most of the damage was done in Black communities, unfortunately, and especially in Watts, you know. And so again, yeah, that's the same thing. But I think it translates to the Capitol one too, because again, how are you helping it? And especially, even if they open the door for you going in, like, is that the smartest thing?
No. Yeah. I mean, yeah, whatever they wanted to, whatever they were protesting or whatever they were doing just went down the drain, no matter what it was.
In the door.
Yeah.
As soon as you walked in the door, you know, which brings up the conspiracy theories of all the people outside were, you know, the actual protesters, and the people that walked in or went in were all plants.
Well, we'll see if they go to jail.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't think if I'm a plant, I want to be like, well, okay, I'll take one for the team and spend.
I mean, you do if you've got an offshore fund when you get out, you know, and they're going to keep you in there for a year, give you this dietary restriction, you know, give you all the, and, you know, I mean, somebody's like, hey, you know, when you get out, there's 5 million waiting for you. I'll take a year, you know. Yeah. So, you know, I mean, and that's the thing. And this is what I love about conspiracy type theories and things like that, because you just don't know, you know, and there's so many people so convinced. I heard Joe Rogan talking about the fake moon landing and how he was really into that for a while. Like he was hardcore researching it and really believing that they'd faked it. And just because there was so much out there for a period of time. I mean, it's still out there, but they were really pushing it. You could really find it everywhere for a period of time. And ultimately he's like, I'm not going to say they did fake it, you know, because I don't believe that. Most likely they didn't, is his theory now, but he's also still never going to say they couldn't have, you know. He's right. Kind of on that fence of, it's like, you'd be silly to say, no, it couldn't ever happen, because of course it could happen.
Well, we've been there since, so.
Yeah. Well, but not in the same, the capacity that we were back then, you know, because we were flying missions, a lot of missions there, landing, you know, a lot of people there. But for me, I don't doubt it at all. Everything I looked on that was, yeah, maybe they took some bad photos to like advertise it, you know, and promote it. You know, maybe they did some of those things, because there's obviously some videos and photos that you're just like, come on, guys, you know. But for the most part of it, you know, I could see where it would be hard for me to think it didn't happen. Like, I can't buy into that. But again, I can't sit on the side and say they didn't fake it, because again, you'd be silly to be 100% against it.
I guess we would just have to see the guys that's going up to the moon since to be like, there's the flag.
Yeah. Yeah, if they could give us why don't they take a picture of it?
Right.
Well, I mean, and you think about this, like what Bezos and Musk are doing around space flight right now. I mean, you know, Musk wants to put a person on Mars by like 2032, you know. And so I don't care how far back you go, like if we're putting a person on Mars, that obviously I think we could have put a person on the moon.
Yeah.
You know, you're talking about a whole different ball game there. And we're not that, I mean, yes, 69, 70 was a long time ago, but not that long ago.
I don't know. I've seen enough sci-fi movies. Do we really want to be going to Mars?
Yeah. It's going to be interesting, you know, because you're not talking about a lot of stuff we do, you know, most of our space travel, not travel, but most of the stuff we launch out, we're not in outer space, you know, we're still within, you know, the Earth's atmosphere on a lot of that. Even when you talk about Bezos, he wants to do that, hotel in space, right? I mean, it's really just in the atmosphere. It's not like this is Deep Space Nine, like you're just 60 miles up, or whatever. You're not that far away from Earth. It seems like you're in space, of course, because you're up there near the atmosphere, but it's not like Mars space. That's a different type of space,
right? You won't catch me in that hotel.
Well, that, like I said, that's still close. What happens when that hotel's like on a moon by Jupiter or something?
Like I said, I've seen enough sci-fi movies. You're not getting me up into space.
Yeah. Well, with what Bob Lazar knows, we have the technology. We just got to reverse engineer it, and then we can get to all these planets.
Well, once Musk takes over Twitter and everything, him and Bezos can take over the world, and they can get all that information.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how much both of them are investing, not just money and time, and obviously they're going to get return revenue from this, but they're investing a lot of money and time into space and really trying to advance that. The good thing that I think comes out of that is NASA has now ramped up. I mean, like, you know what, we can't just let these guys do all of this. We got to get back involved in this. And there's a lot of NASA projects, one of them being to land another person on the moon, not just fly around it. Like they want to do another landing.
Well, wasn't also Jeff Branson doing this too?
I don't know.
He was, Virgin.
Right. It's the crazy thing though about, so India is just now like getting into this too, right? So India is just starting to launch their space program, and it just makes you wonder, like a country that big is just starting to launch space programs. Russia still hasn't landed on the moon. So I guess 50 years ago, that might make a little bit of a case for, that we did or did not do it.
Oh, yeah. So Branson went up on September 2nd.
Oh, recently?
Yeah.
Okay.
Virgin Galactic space flight.
Well, yeah, but again, none of them are flying into space though.
Yeah, he had it, or flight to the edge of space. Oh, something's going on with his. The FAA, I don't know how much clearances and stuff he had, because the FAA was after him, and
which is kind of funny. Like, you're gonna go after, pretty soon you're gonna have to have a license to fly in space, when we get to that Star Wars period where people are flying ships, people are building unauthorized Millennium Falcons and taking them out into space.
So it looks like Branson's had issues, and so that's why the FAA is checking in on him. But yeah,
I don't know that. I don't know what his wealth is, and like, can he compete with guys like Bezos and Musk when it comes to this? I mean, because would you really want to invest money into that when you're going to be like third, fourth person to do it?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure at first he was, I think, the first one, and then they just took over because they have more money, probably.
Yeah.
His net worth is 4.6 billion.
Yeah, so he's not worth nearly what these guys are worth.
Right.
And he doesn't have companies like they do. So that's a pretty lofty, some lofty space goals, which I think is really cool. Another topic that I wanted to hit on, we kind of started hitting on this a little bit. So when you talk about, like, we were talking about Biden and Kamala Harris, and they get these clips of this, it just makes me wonder, or not makes me wonder, like, I know what they're doing, but how bad is this for people to get these like constant clips of, so let's say, Joe Biden misspeaking and speaking poorly and doing all these things, when the reality is that it's not happening all the time. We're just highlighting, or whatever source you're going to is highlighting these things. Like, how bad is that, for us as a group, as a society? Not say how good is it for the Republicans, but how bad is it for people in general?
Well, yeah, because they're just, and that's the problem is with, we've become so much like this. The rest of the world thinks we're a bunch of laughing stocks because we supply the own information. Yes, Biden is no Barack Obama. He's no Bill Clinton. He's not the greatest speaker in the world.
Right.
He's going to have mishaps. He's old.
Well, yeah, and that's the other, he's definitely, and he's never been a great speaker, number one, which is, you gotta take that into account, but I saw Azado, he's a big union guy, and he was in the union in Chicago, and he posted something about Biden speaking there. And I just thought it was interesting that, somebody's being like, oh, Biden's not a good speaker. I don't remember the whole thing, but so I just listened to his speech he gave there. And it would tell a totally different story than what you would see if you just went on YouTube and typed in Biden can't talk, and watched like 10 videos. And so it's interesting to me, is because he still had his missteps, and you can still tell it was Biden, because he does have times where he stutters a little bit, or where he starts one sentence and then turns it into another sentence. Like, he just stops in the middle of the sentence and he wants to go a different way. He still has those, but it's nothing like you would be made out to believe if you were like a heavy Republican or right wing, where those were the videos you saw or were actively looking for. Those tell a whole different story than what it'd be just to listen to that whole speech he gives.
Well, and that's the thing is about the internet now, and it's so hard because you have to weed through everything if you want something in the middle.
Right.
Because most of the people are going to get on there and be like, this is my point of view, and I'm going to slant it completely that way. Both sides. And so, and that's what sells. It's not like, us talking here is doing anything. We're not, people aren't giving us comments or likes. Come on, people.
Yeah, right. I mean, comment. Tell us what you think.
Unless you want Steve just to talk Minecraft all day.
Right. And then we'll get tons of views. I can just load it up and just play it, and people can watch me play. We get more likes and comments. That's funny. Looking at the same side, but on the opposite, like, didn't that negatively affect Trump in the same way? I mean, think about what you saw. You said it works both ways, but when Trump was president, like, it was the same thing. Like, you couldn't go on there without seeing some type of can't believe he said this, can't believe he did this, or listen to him in these 10 different scenarios, cutting out pieces of individual clips.
Yeah, I'll say I'm not a fan of Trump, but I will say he had some unfavorable stuff happen. There was a lot of stuff where it's like, no, it's not that big a deal, but people just make it so much of a big deal about certain things he says. And it's like, maybe just listen a little more, listen to what he's saying, not just listen to looking at him and saying how much you hate him.
Right. Doesn't that kind of fall like on our fault, our responsibility as a group of the American people to, like, shouldn't there be some level of respect for, if you're going to commit to the type of democracy that we have a leader and a president, shouldn't there be some type of, like, you have to, like, respect and trust your president to some degree? Like, otherwise you're kind of working against yourself. Why do we even have the system if we're going to elect somebody and then fight him?
Well, I just think, first off, it's funny, we're to the point now in society where, do you trust anyone?
Yeah.
And so you can't really trust but I think what the biggest thing people need to learn is the president is not all powerful and isn't a king or something.
Right.
And that's how everyone views it, is like, oh, we got a Democrat in office now. Yay, we're going to get everything. Or we got a Republican in office now. Yeah. No, it's not. It's one of the three branches.
Right. Yeah. Well, yeah, it's like gas prices are high because it's Biden's fault, right? I mean, that's a simple example of what people will say. like, because Biden's out there like controlling the gas price.
When Trump was in, we never had high gas prices.
Yeah, had nothing to do with the way the oil economy was, and everything happening. That it's funny that they blame the president a lot, and the president has little control, very little, comparatively when you think about the entire scheme of things.
Well, and that's the thing is when something's going right, then presidents like the quarterback.
Yeah.
When things go wrong, it's their fault. When things go right, they're the greatest.
Yeah. Well, and it's also a little bit of themselves kind of putting themselves in that position, because they like to take credit for those things that go right too, and it's like, well, then why don't you take credit for what's going wrong? Maybe, it's like a quarterback. If I threw you the ball and your receiver dropped it, and then instead of blaming the receiver, I said, oh, sorry, that was a bad throw, I threw it too low, too high in front of you, too behind you, or whatever, and took responsibility for that, right? But then also when the guy catches a touchdown, he comes back and says, look, that was a great throw.
I just would wish our presidents would go back to the quarterback speak and then go out there and just talk without really saying anything.
Right. Well, yeah, and do what I guess the president is designed to do, which is bring people together through good speech and mutual goals and aspirations.
Right.
But yeah, and it's the whole political realm right now. I say that with a grain of salt, because when you think about, can you even, so would the left ever support Trump? Would the right ever support Biden at this point in the world right now where we're at? No, right?
No.
I could never see that happening. Maybe 100 years ago. I mean, and I don't know, I was there, but before the division was so strong, or maybe it was always this strong.
Well, here's one. And before, like, how like Ellen DeGeneres is like done now, right? Everyone went after her,
right?
And because she was friends with W, and then all of a sudden, after she found out she was friends with W, then all of a sudden all this stuff started coming out,
right?
But now everyone loves W because who his other friend is? Michelle Obama. Yeah, they're not going to say anything bad about her.
No,
so now everyone loves W.
Yeah, I mean, what comes next is like the Republicans not loving him,
Yeah, exactly. I'm pretty sure that's there now. They're like, oh, it was the same with Romney. They went after Romney now because he denounced Trump.
Right.
And he's like, no, he's pretty much just being a decent human being and just saying the truth. He can be a Republican and say something against a Republican.
Yeah. Well, and the same thing, it's like, it goes the same way if you try to say anything bad about Biden, talking to a Democrat or someone on the left, it's like you may well have started World War III, if you say anything at all. And it's like, I can't even challenge, I can't even, and I'll challenge the other side too. I can't do either. So like a person trying to like make sense of it, like you can't even do anything.
I will say one person, and I can't stand her and I don't like her politics at all, but I do respect her because she will call out her party, is AOC.
Well, yeah, because she's progressive left. They are almost their own party now.
Yeah, like she's so far left. Like she understands that the political machine, she doesn't want that. She wants to just take it. But it is hilarious. She'll call out like, what is her name? Who's the speaker?
Oh, Pelosi.
Yeah. She'll call out Pelosi.
Oh yeah. And because to be honest with you, if you like take a hard look at the Democratic Party right now, you have a very progressive left, and then kind of the conservative left comparatively. Obviously they're not right conservative, but they're more of a conservative left than the progressive left.
The conservative left are the ones that want to keep their positions and keep their money coming in.
Yeah, well, yeah, because that's what they all technically want to do. I mean, that's in the end that's still going to come down to it. the money and the power. And that was actually what I was going to talk about as I was bringing in that Biden, which was he goes into this conversation, and I respect what he's doing. I think it's, I do like unions, and I do like everything that they were talking about. But what hit me in the conversation that he's talking about, he's really pumping them up to be middle class. He's like, you guys are the greatest, and you're the middle class, and you're the heart and the backbone of America, and it's like, so basically you're pumping them up to be middle class, like tell them that's the best it gets for them.
And I kind of feel that's anti-union because they want to get their piece of the pie, right? They don't want to be, they want to, like, if Walmart is making how much whatever, it's like, no, I shouldn't be making $14. I should be making a decent living.
Well, yeah, and when you think about it, it's like, so he goes off in his speech to talk about how the world doesn't run without unions, especially the one he was talking about, and how they built America and they built the economy. And I was just thinking, I was like, well, if they built everything, why are they the middle class? Isn't there like something that should be, shouldn't this be equal?
It's the Illuminati's out there, man. They're stopping it.
Well, I mean, because that's the question is, when you think about the way it is, you have, a lower class, a middle class, and an upper class, right?
I'm pretty sure there's no middle class anymore.
Is that just the way, like, since we've adopted that as a country, is that just the way that it's always going to be? Like, we don't look at it for a better way to do it. We're just like, is it accepted now that we have a lower, a middle, and upper class?
Well, I kind of feel like, due to COVID also, but also once we went to two working household members, it kind of destroyed the middle class, because now you've got people working lower jobs, or you've got people working higher jobs, where you have someone who's a middle and someone high, you know what I mean? It's kind of like the middle class is kind of out, because you either are down here and you need help, or you're this close, but you're too far up, so you don't need help.
Yeah, you can't get any help.
Yeah.
Well, and it's like, with the cost of things and the cost of living, and that what the at least the American society we live in right now, even people that make good amount of money, it's hard. Even if you have two people making a decent amount of money, which would normally be a great middle class, still have a hard time.
Yeah.
They're working month to month, or living paycheck to paycheck, or all their money goes into all their assets all the time. Makes it really hard for them to invest and to grow their money.
Yeah. Well, now we got cars. Used cars are the same price as new cars.
Yeah, well, that's the demand thing, right? I mean, when you talk about like the supply and demand, and what's happening with, cars is one of them, real estate's another one of them, food supply is another one of them.
Baby formula.
Yeah, I've seen that one recently. That's a big hot topic right now. So that's really gonna, I think that puts such a strain on what you want to call the middle class, that you can't really get out of it, and that's why I just thought it was interesting that it's just so hard promoting on how great it was that they were middle class. And all I can think about is, well, of course, without them, like, you couldn't be rich, like you couldn't have this great upper class that makes all the money.
I don't know how I feel about a 1%er telling you good job for being middle class.
That's what I mean. Like, and I mean, but if you,
I was going to say the union probably paid him to be there to speak.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure some of the higher up union guys make great money too, but probably not, the average union person makes good money comparatively, to say the lower class. But obviously they're never going to be upper class as far as, 1%ers or even 10%ers or that.
Maybe we need to get Zato on a
Yeah, I mean, well, he's like high up in his
Yeah. He can give
IBU,
us all the details.
right? But well, I mean, again, I don't think, and none of them live bad lives. Anybody that makes a good salary has a home and has a retirement and got some money in the bank and has transportation. Like they're living a pretty good life. I guess that circles back to like the whole thought process of what is living a good life. Is living a good life, working for 50 years and saving all your money, doing this 9 to 5 or whatever your
Well, you
schedule
can't
is.
even do that now. Most companies are going to kick you out before then.
Yeah. Yeah. And then early retirements and forced retirements. But yeah, I mean, is it really, like I said, is that really working a good life? But then it comes back to that same scenario is what other option do we have? Like we've built our country on this, lower, middle, upper class structure.
Well, and that's, a change in society too. So when our parents, our grandparents were around, that was the norm. Was you go to work, you work your hours, you work to live, and
Yeah.
you did your stuff, or you lived to work and you did your stuff, you were dependable, you came, and now there's a switch in society where it's more like, "Oh, dude, this is just a job. I just want money. I want to be doing other things with my life."
Right.
And that's why you're having this great huge thing where people are like, "No, man, I ain't taking that job anymore. I want to do something else."
Yeah. And those two things are clashing right now and are going to continue to clash. Right. I mean, because we can't continue to run our society like that old school thought process if more and more people are pushing to wanting a different lifestyle and not wanting to do that same old we'll call it a 9 to 5, but it's different for everybody, but just have that work all your life.
Well, and then they
go
talk
out.
about studies talking about 4-day work weeks are more highly optimal. And then I remember in gosh, it's been years, talking about places like in Europe and Spain and stuff that take like an hour or two off in the middle of the day.
Oh yeah, so Spain, there's a siesta part. Most of the businesses close down, and then open back up after about 2 hours, sometimes more, sometimes less. But yeah, it's like some of the businesses won't even open till 5 anyway. So there's no morning, but some of them are like morning break, come back and do it again. And they are doing it with like 25-hour work weeks total, 30-hour work weeks total, working a lot. So that's not uncommon for sure. Yeah, I saw that a lot over there. It's like I wanted to go to this restaurant, but it's like, oh, they don't open for another hour and a half. Why? Because everybody's up taking a nap, or
And you're like, I'm hungry now.
Yeah. And so it's interesting, but also just when you talk about length of work weeks, like a couple of my first jobs when I was younger, I was required to work 50, 60 hours a week, when I was managing some big box stores. That was just a job. It was like, hey, you want this job? You're working 5/12s. That was just it. There was no 40-hour work week.
Oh yeah, I know. And one of my jobs, yeah, it was a mandatory 50-hour work week. You worked 4/10, you worked 5/10s, and
Right.
that was your shift. You didn't get off before.
Yep.
And your salary. So
yeah. So I was thinking about that though. I was thinking about that clash of like the way we've been for so long of this system to where what people want now and the differences in those pushes. And it kind of feels like those two things are colliding right now.
Yeah.
And what's that going to look like in 10 years or 20 years?
Right.
Like, will that, what
are our kids going to be doing?
What they pitch to us as the American dream, kind of feels like that's not the dream anymore.
Well, because the American dream was you did all this work, but then the owners and the upper management made all the money.
Right. That's what I'm saying. And a lot of people, you think about, well, but you had a home and you had your kids and, and you got to retire and everything like that. But it's like, now you're 65 years old, and now you've done nothing but work the whole time.
Right. And you want to try and go and enjoy life. Then it's like, come on, man, you got to do it.
Yeah.
When you're younger.
Yeah. You got to try it. what are we losing in that American dream, or American scheme, as it's commonly called. So that was another interesting one, that kind of came up in there. So last topic, let's hit this real quick. Who's going to win the NBA Finals?
It's so tough right now because so many teams are kind of choking away. I'm going to go Warriors.
I think the Warriors are winning it, huh? So they're now what, 3-2 in their series?
The Suns, Mavericks are going to game 7.
Yeah, so they're going to game 7.
And then,
which is interesting because Dallas just doesn't seem that good to me. I mean, Luka's obviously amazing, but
Chris Paul in the playoffs.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Golden State, good chance. So the Heat just beat 76ers, so Heat go forward, and now 3-2 in Boston and Milwaukee, right?
Right, with Milwaukee up 3-2.
Milwaukee up 3-2. So who wins that series? You think Milwaukee wins that series?
I don't know. We'll see, because the next game's in Milwaukee or in Boston. I think it's in Milwaukee.
Yeah, I think it is too.
Well, if Boston pulls that out, they win the series.
Yeah.
But it's just so hard because I would say if Middleton was there, I would pick the Bucks to repeat. But without Middleton, Giannis can't do it all. And Drew Holiday's playing well too. But
no, Middleton, that's a huge loss for them.
I would say if they go on, I think it'll be Heat Warriors.
Yeah, I mean, the Heat, man, I know the 76ers are trash, but I mean, obviously they're in the playoffs and they've got good players. The Heat to go win that 4-2 pretty convincingly.
Without Kyle Lowry.
Yeah. I like the Heat's chances this year. I think that you have a really good chance. So
I guess 76ers should have kept Jimmy Butler, huh?
Right. Well, I think it's just, to me, basketball is still just this team game, and it comes about meshing with your team. And 76ers just never meshed. Yes, they got good players, but it's, you're just not meshing well.
Right.
You're not playing well as a team, and I think that's why the Grizzlies are where they're at right now. It's just because they play really well as a team.
Yeah, without Ja, they destroyed the Warriors the last game.
Yeah. So, and it's not because they have super great talent. It's just because they play really well together. So I'm gonna go with Heat. I'm taking the Heat. I think the Heat are gonna pull it out. But Golden State's the safe pick, definitely. So much talent.
Yeah.
So,
well, especially now that Jordan Poole is playing.
Right.
It's like, Steph, Klay Thompson, Draymond. Let's add Jordan Poole.
Why not throw another guy in the mix, right? But Phoenix. I think Phoenix gives them a run for their money for sure.
If they get by the Mavericks.
If they get by the Mavericks too, yeah. I mean, in the Mavericks, it's just Luke is just so dominant.
Yeah. And then Jalen Brunson's come around.
Brunson's had a really good season in total. His whole season's been good.
He's going to future Nick.
Yep. Cool. All right. Well, good stuff. Hopefully we get Mike and Wes next time. For those of you guys watching and now listening, we're getting some good listeners here, especially on Anchor, which is one of the ones that we're podcasted on, but Spotify, Apple Podcasts, getting viewers on those, still getting YouTube viewers. So thanks for listening. If you are watching on YouTube, don't forget to subscribe and like. You hit the notification bell. That'll give us get you on the playlist so you can watch the old ones as well.
Yes.
So final thoughts?
Raiders got some primetime games. I'm very disappointed they didn't get an early Monday night, but yeah.
NFL, I mean, never goes away for us. We're always on the lookout. Schedule comes out, the draft, free agency. It's a year-long process.
And the Raiders got the great Jarrett Stidham.
Great. Yeah, I'm not super excited about the Bears season coming up, but we'll see what happens.
What are they going to do with Fields if they get the first pick?
All right, geez. I think they could get the first pick with the team they've got. So we'll see. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching HSC podcast number 19. We'll see you next week.